Welcome, everyone, to Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp. Welcome this evening.
You're listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And tonight, my show will be focusing on the post-pandemic life. What will that look like? I know that none of us will ever be the same again. Have you thought about what it will feel like to hug strangers again? Is that even something we're going to be willing to do? Handshaking? Remember when Dr. Fauci said that we probably should discontinue the practice? And what about kissing on the cheek? I know that I come from a culture that's very, touchy-feely and huggy, and I don't know. If we're going to be able to go back to business as usual, we may have to change what our life is like, perhaps forever. I know that we can't have gone through this global pandemic and lost so much, lost so many lives, so many businesses, the ways of doing things that we are so accustomed to, and not be changed by it. So tonight, I want us to start to reimagine the world post-pandemic. What is it going to be like at barbershops and businesses? What's it going to be like going out to the bar? What are family reunions going to look like? What are church services going to look like? How are people intelligently, creatively moving on post-pandemic as some states are beginning to open up while we're still living in the pandemic?
Yeah.
And how are they going to do things from here on out? Well, I have some interesting stories tonight about just how folks are going about trying to deal with the reopening and the getting back to business as usual while life still is being traumatized by this deadly virus. All of that on my show tonight. But first, I want to thank all of you who have sent me information, comments, contacts, calls, emails, all of it. I'm truly honored that you choose to spend your time listening to 88.1 FM and that our broadcasts are meaningful and useful to you. So thank you for supporting independent media.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It is impressive that people, like our show, or some people love it, some people hate it. I know how that goes. But thank you for being here, regardless, tonight. We have a good show prepared for you. And if you want to get a hold of us, there's a whole bunch of different ways, and I'll just run through them real quick. You can do email, Cindy at kpppfm.com, or me, Duke at kpppfm.com. We have a website, kpppfm.com. You can go there and find out all about our shows and our past and our programming. You can also make a donation by going to the donate tab, and it's tax deductible. I can't talk tonight. And also we have a Facebook site, 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead, Mexi-Can, and the People's Press Project. Our YouTube channel is Duke1517. If you want to give us a call and leave a message on our message line, you can call 701-566-0917. Again, that number is 701-566-0917.
Now, I want to start off with some breaking news from NBC. The personal valet for our president has now tested positive for coronavirus. And the president and vice president has since tested negative, according to the White House. But this is probably the closest call in terms of contact of the virus to our president that has taken place so far. Let me just point out that although our president and our vice president have not been wearing masks, even in situations for which people assumed they would, and for which they were criticized for not doing so, because they are taking very, very high precautions around the president and the vice president. Let's be pretty clear. The president is not really allowed to have anybody in his circumference, neither is the vice president, or I'm assuming the first or second families, that aren't being tested, that aren't being checked, that aren't being temperature checked, that aren't being quick tested. None of the people that come into that press conference are allowed in there unless they've been tested. And unless they can test them and clear them, they're not going near the president. When the president and the vice president were criticized for not wearing their masks, and they said, well, I don't really need to. What the president is referring to is that they're getting tested all the time. And by all the time, I mean, it's difficult for folks returning to work sometimes to get tests. Not for the president.
No.
The president is getting tested once a week currently. But that is about to change as of the writing of this news piece, informing the public that the personal valet to the president has tested positive for coronavirus. The president has announced they will now be tested twice a week. So for the people out there that are worried about the fact the president isn't wearing a mask, he's going out in public, is our president in danger? Is our vice president, the first or second families, in danger? Why are they giving press conferences so close to each other? Because everybody's been tested. And hopefully one day, Americans, just like our American president, will be able to get tested regularly so we know where the dangers around us are. But let me just tell you how upset the president was about this. This is how, heart attack serious the president is about his protection and his safety. Upon learning that his valet was infected, Trump became, quote unquote, lava level mad at his staff. And he basically exhorted them for not doing their jobs better. He didn't feel that they are doing all they can to protect him. How did this happen? How did this, well, they're part of the Navy, excuse me. How did this person from the Navy, who regularly sends out details to the White House for a variety of different positions to take care of the president's needs, serving him meals, bringing him beverages, ironing his clothes, shining his shoes, all of that stuff. How did that person that is so close to the president getting COVID and then being in close contact with the president the way that he was? I mean, the president is over the age of 60. As far as I know, the vice president is too.
Oh, yeah, they're in their 70s, aren't they?
And that would make them, although I know that the president is in fine health, it still makes them a greater risk for exposure. And as you know, the CDC and prevention recommends that any person that has come in close contact with somebody that just tested positive is supposed to quarantine from other people for the next 14 days and to check their temperature twice a day, all that good stuff. We have no idea whether or not our president will be required to follow those guidelines, or if they plan on following those guidelines. But it just goes to show you how important testing is for the safety and the security of our leaders in this country, and why I think it will be increasingly important for the rest of the workforce doing those jobs. I think that testing and protection for the valet, the person serving our president his food, his beverages, preparing his clothes, his shoes, that person should have been put into the bubble. And where he went and who he came into contact with should have been very, very closely monitored, so that he was always being tested and checked, so that there wasn't any danger to our president, right? So those are things that we are going to have to look at as we reopen our country. Because, folks, we are not out of the woods yet. Let's take a look at our numbers around the globe. Right now, in the whole country, the whole planet, on the whole world, we have over 3,815,000 cases. We have 267,469 deaths. In the United States, we are now at 1,292,293 cases. And 76,918 people that have died. I really have a hard time every day as I look at that number climbing, inching its way toward the 100,000 mark, knowing that we are going to have an outbreak, even as recognized, accepted pretty much by the White House in reopening. I mean, the president has referred to the American people as warriors. His press secretary has said that we are warriors to the president because of the way that we have stayed at home and followed CDC distancing guidelines and all of that. But the president has increasingly been referring to the American people as warriors as the reopening begins. And he also referred to himself as an at-war president, which makes me think that he wants us to be made of the same metal as warriors as we reopen. Some of us that have higher vulnerabilities to dying from this disease are very concerned about being thrown into a quote-unquote war against an invisible enemy, which we are more than likely to lose. And locally in Minnesota and North Dakota, how are our numbers
they're climbing.
doing?
Not so good. Minnesota, in fact, in the past day had an additional 30 deaths, bringing the total of people who have died, 428 people, and 7,234 people are confirmed positive, which is an increase of 728 people in one day. And that's Minnesota. In our county, Clay County, we had a few more positives. There hasn't been any more deaths. We have 13 deaths and 169 positive cases here in Clay County. Now in Fargo, across the river in Cass County, basically there was an increase of 49 more individuals tested positive from yesterday. There were no deaths. However, Cass County had 23. Cass County has been having between 20 and 50 new cases a day. In North Dakota, what they do, they pride themselves around, is this daily positive rate of completed tests, and measure to the positives and the tests, and they have this low number of 2.1%, and Cass County has 10%, and that's horrible. So they've convened a task force for just this part of the state, and getting people together. So what can they do? And what they really have to focus on is teaching people to social distance, to keep their distance, to wear masks. It's just the basic things that we've all learned already. Fargoans, North Dakotans, for some reason, don't pay attention to it because they don't believe that they're really at risk, and many other reasons. And we have a lot of elders dying. The nursing homes are infested with the staff and the people who are residents there. So we have a lot to do to really make that curve go down. But meanwhile, North Dakota continues to open up pretty much everything.
Lexi informs me that valet is being mispronounced by myself.
I thought it was valet.
I'm distinct. Lexi, I watched Downton Abbey, okay?
That's right.
I watched all of it. And they in Europe they say valet. Okay? I'm pronouncing it the British way
I would say the French way.
because just like the Granthams in their big house, we're talking not about the valet that parks your car out at the restaurant or at the Bellagio. We're talking about the personal assistant to the president of these United States. I think that deserves a more hoity-toity pronunciation of valet.
That's right.
Right?
Okay.
So I'm calling him a valet.
Valet.
It was a personal choice, Lexi. I just want you to know that. Speaking of choices, the Department of Justice has decided they are no longer going forward with the case against retired Army Lieutenant General Flynn. For months now, the DOJ has been trying to, General Flynn has been trying to, Lieutenant Flynn has been trying to withdraw his plea, and he was being aided by a new attorney that was aggressively challenging the prosecution's case and their conduct. But the case had been plodding through the court system with no resolution ever since the original guilty plea entered by Mr. Flynn, even as speculations swirled that President Trump would pardon him. The DOJ has since dismissed the case, which would appear to put an end to the entire process. Meanwhile, in California, an interesting development, which I think is going to kind of set the stage. You know, I look at signs, I look for little embers of information here and there, and I go, oh, I'm starting to see trends. Let me pick that up and let me bring it over here, because this is what's going to happen, folks, okay? I'm going to keep it 100. I'm going to tell you exactly what we are experiencing right now in regards to different people in our community, in our country, in our world. No matter what you do, no matter what the president says or the CDC says or the task force says or your governor says, there are going to be COVIDiots that don't believe that the coronavirus is real, not until it kills their mom or their cousin. And even then, they might not believe it. Even then, they might think that a doctor injected something or that a Martian came down from the heavens and killed them. There's a certain segment of the population that no matter what evidence is brought forth to them, they're going to think that it was some kind of conspiracy to, some false flag event or whatever that in their mind is really going on. And you're going to have to contend with the fact that out there in the world, as you try to return to life, there are going to be COVIDiots that are going to be not only putting their own lives at risk because they're not going to be wearing any kind of protection, they're not going to take any kinds of precautions, they're going to cough in people's faces because they don't feel like they need to put their elbow up. They're going to scream at people. They're going to go and infect police officers who they're screaming at. It's just going to happen. There's going to be a segment of the population that no matter what you do to educate them, no matter what laws you pass, no matter what executive orders you have, no matter what fines you assess, they're going to do what they are going to do. And you're going to have to be prepared as a community to respond to that. At the same time, you are going to have a certain segment of the population who have no other choice but to go into the world and work or do certain things associated with assembly. For example, there are a lot of people out there who consider themselves, armchair constitutional law attorneys, but you're not. You barely understand layman's terms of what your constitutional rights are, much less the complicated arena of constitutional law. But never mind that. These are the same people that are willing to assert that they have the constitutional right to free speech, to assembly, to bear arms, and to their religion, to practice their religion. And that no law shall be created under the sun that shall abridge any of those constitutionally protected rights. And those constitutionally protected rights are in the Constitution, so that means that's the highest law of the land. No other entity, no governor, no mayor, no other entity in the world can write a law or, enforce some kind of a law against a constitutionally protected right. Except that's not how it works. That's never been how it works. For everything that is in the Constitution, that is one of those rights that I just spoke of, whether it's assembly or free speech or what have you, practice of religion, all of that, there's also a review of the law that says, yes, your right to free speech is constitutionally protected, but you don't have the right to put people's lives at risk by yelling fire inside of a theater. Sure, you have rights to assembly, but you don't have the right to incite a riot, to incite violence. You have abridgment of all of those rights when they're examined under the law. And so, for the people out there that, like the hairdresser in the South who decided she was going to open up her hair salon, and by gosh, if they decided they were going to fine her and arrest her, they were going to have to keep doing that because she was going to keep going to work. There's going to be a lot of Americans that are going to do that. You know why? Because they don't have a choice. Because if they don't go to work, they won't eat. So, how is the government going to respond to that? The government doesn't want to use the law like a hammer. They want to use it as a warning. They want to use it to let people know, especially businesses know. As a governing body over the state, regulating business such as hair salons, restaurants, hospitals, blah, blah, blah. The governor of the state, as well as each municipality, has to assume liability for not properly licensing, for not properly having those folks follow the law, such that they didn't properly inspect that restaurant that gave you botulism, such that they didn't properly inspect that beauty salon that gave you AIDS, or such that they didn't properly inspect this or that other place that made you sick with COVID and killed you. So when a governor of a state, looking at the advice of the health experts in the state, says, we can't have that tattoo parlor open yet, and the tattoo parlor says, I'm going to go ahead and do my tattooing. Now they're assuming a greater risk, especially if they've been arrested and fined, because now that has established under the law that that business was warned. That business was told. And if that business, if that church, if that whatever, you insert whatever location people want to congregate at right now, decides to go ahead and open up, then they are assuming a greater risk, as well as the people that are going in there. So let me just show you the evidence of how this is panning out. In states all across the country, especially places that are considered essential workers, and most recently meat packers, that were told that the Defense Protection Act means that those places have to stay open and you've got to go to work. There's a bunch of federal workers, healthcare workers, essential workers like meat processors that were not protected with sick pay, that were not protected with workers' compensation if they were to get sick on the job from COVID. From COVID, specifically from COVID, and or die. And so, in some states, they are passing laws that make it a presumption. It is assumed if you file a claim that you got sick because of COVID, they have to pay. The state's insurance has to pay you not only your lost wages and your sick time, but damages, especially if you have permanent physical damages to your body because of COVID, permanent brain damage, permanent lung damage, permanent whatever damage to your body, and or death, and death benefits to your kids and your wife or your spouse. And that's happening. Listen to Gavin Newsom talk about how they've enhanced workers' comp benefits in the state of California.
Of our previous announcements until today. I just signed an executive order to extend benefits, workers' comp benefits in those sectors, and now broaden it beyond just the healthcare and first responder sector to all sectors of our economy under what we call a rebuttable presumption. That may be confusing to some, except to say this. If you've tested positive or been diagnosed with C-19, with COVID-19 by a physician, you are eligible for this workers' comp benefit. It can only be rebutted by your employer, but under strict criteria. So this is a way of providing support to our critical workers that are essential in our capacity, not only to meet the needs of people today, but as we begin to enter into this new phase and start to reopen our economy, are essential.
Wow.
Now, let me remind you that I have been talking a lot about this because you're going to hear a lot of people talking about liability. And I told you that when the president used the Defense Protection Act, he was signaling to meat packers that he was putting them under the umbrella of the liability of this order when it's really just an illusion. No such order exists, just like although there's workers' comp, there is an illusion that employers and companies cannot be sued out of existence by their employees for putting them in harm's way. Let me remind folks what the history of worker comp entails. There was a time when there was no such thing as workers' compensation insurance in any state. And in fact, at the time when our great country was building all of the infrastructure that we have, for example, the railroad, there was a lot of people in these very dangerous jobs that were dying in droves. There was no OSHA back then. There was no workers' comp back then. And because of the gross negligence, the practice, the pattern of behavior of ignoring the conditions for these very low-paid workers in many instances, many of them immigrants, there was no protection for those companies when those employees, some of them, decided they would sue, or the families of the dead decided they would sue. And when this started to become a huge problem for these companies, such that some of them were being sued out of existence, they turned to the federal government and said, protect us from liability. If you want us to keep building infrastructure and growing and doing all these things at a breakneck pace where we sacrifice the safety of the workers in the process, you're going to have to give us some protection. In other words, if we're going to maim and kill people in the order of doing business, the federal government has to give us a green light to do that. And that is where workers' comp was born. Because it limits your liability. You can know as a pattern of practice at your job that you are making people deaf, blind, that you are making people maimed, that you are poisoning people with chemicals, or that you killed someone with COVID. And that you're probably going to kill someone else because you're not changing your business practices to stop that danger. Normally, you could be sued out of existence. But under workers' comp, they limit the liability that an employer has to pay an employee for those damages. And the fact that states like California, massive, massive population of workers in California. I mean, a state like California accounts for a large percentage of the mass of this country. California and Texas. I mean, they could be countries of their own. They're so big. For California to say, we're going to give a fast track to workers' comp claims, I don't know if you know how significant that is for anybody out there that's listening to the sound of my voice that has ever tried to file a workers' comp claim, especially in North Dakota. You know what I mean. I mean, it's next to impossible to get benefits paid to you by the workers' comp apparatus in your state, in most states. And I've only worked as a paralegal in three on workers' comp. And it is incredibly difficult for workers to assert their rights even when the employer has been paying into the insurance and it is well known that the injury or death was caused due to somebody's job. And yet, California's doing it. They're making a fast track and they're making it harder for the employer. Did you hear that? Mm-hmm. A rebuttable presumption. He basically said it's going to be pretty difficult. He's telling the workers, go back to work. It's safe. Don't worry. I got you. I'm making this law retroactive for all you federal workers and you healthcare employees that were scared that you missed work because you tested positive for COVID and you didn't have any kind of sick leave or any of that. All those damages, file the claim. We're going to pay them to you. Keep working, Californians, because we have you. What about your employer denying the claim? Don't worry. We're going to make it harder for them to do that. That's him signaling to the workers, we got you. And other states are doing the same. Illinois recently did the very same thing and then withdrew it. They withdrew it because here's the conundrum. The withdrawal came, can you put that back up for me, please? The withdrawal came in the face of the Sangamon County Circuit Court's decision granting the emergency request by the Illinois Manufacturers Association and the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, both of whom blocked the new law. The court found that in passing this emergency rule, because it's an emergency rule, which created a rebuttable presumption that essential workers who became sick with COVID-19 contracted in the course of their employment, the commissioner had exceeded its rulemaking authority under the Illinois Administrative Procedures Act and the Illinois Workers' Compensation Act. And under these laws, the commission only had the authority to create procedural rules. The court determined the commission had improperly created new substantive rights for employees and new liabilities for employers, which is the province of the Illinois legislature and not the commission. So Illinois, I guess, doesn't want to really have essential workers, federal workers, police, EMTs, and all of the people in that list going back to work feeling comfortable and confident. I guess they don't want that because those employers associations said, this means every single person that goes ahead and goes back to work and catches COVID and or dies from COVID is almost, not only are they going to be able to get compensated for that, not only will they get their paid time off, their sick leave, damages, hospital bills paid, all of it. They'll get death benefits if their family dies. We even have to pay for their burial. And we cannot deny the claims? It's going to be a rebuttable presumption, so we can't deny the claims out of hand like we usually do? Yup. So, folks, you're going to see more and more and more of this happening, but you're also going to see something that's going to change life forever, that we need to begin to learn to accept as more and more businesses have gone under. And that is small businesses are going to have a massive die-off. I'll share this link to The Atlantic in which they talk about how things will be changing. Small businesses went into a massive recession, more fragile than their larger cousin, before this crisis had even hit. Half of them had less than 2 weeks worth of cash on hand to operate, making it impossible to cover rent, insurance, utilities, and payroll through any kind of substantive downturn. And the coronavirus downturn has indeed been shocking and sustained. Data from the credit card processors suggests that roughly 30% of small businesses have shut down during the pandemic. Transaction volumes and decent enough proxy for sales shows even bigger dips. Travel agencies are down 98%.
Yeah.
Photography studios, 88%. Daycare centers, 75%. And advertising agencies, 60%. The problem with the relief package runs far deeper than their clunky rollout. For one, banks have been prioritizing applicants for bigger clients. Some have even developed concierge treatment for the wealthy firms. Even after some congressional fixes, the small business plan in that way has helped big businesses over small businesses and established small businesses over new small businesses. As the approval of loans to brand name companies such as Shake Shack, Ruth's Chris, the Los Angeles Lakers, Potbelly, and others have now demonstrated. And as you know, a lot of those people under pressure have given that money back. Much of the help has gone to companies that needed it the least. Among them, firms with employees counts just under the SBA caps, franchises of major chains, and publicly traded firms, which are, by definition, able to raise money from investors. As structured by the federal government, it was inherently regressive. Indeed, loans of $1 million or more soaked up half of the initial $350 billion allocated by Congress. So less populated states got more money per capita. Guess who? Vermont, North Dakota,
Really?
Minnesota, Nevada, and Florida. And of course, and Minnesota, those were overrepresented in this loan process, that money process. And Nevada, Florida, and California were underrepresented.
Okay.
Researchers found no evidence that the money went to places and industries that were hit the hardest, as measured by business closure and declines in hours worked. The accommodations and food service sector counted for 2 in every 3 lost jobs, but received only 9% of that total bailout. Although the government is not collecting or releasing any data of the racial makeup of SBA aid recipients, leaving think tanks and advocacy groups to fill in the gaps for us, the Center for Responsible Lending has estimated that 95% of Black-owned businesses, 91% of Latino-owned businesses, 91% of Native American-owned businesses, Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, and 75% of Asian-owned businesses have close to no chance of getting an emergency loan through a mainstream financial institution.
Wow.
Even with congressional tweaks, the program is amplifying existing racial inequities. But the decimation of American small businesses will inflict even more insidious long-term harm. We're seeing a complete wipeout of a cohort of entrepreneurs and young firms, and there's nothing coming up behind them. The pandemic will mean the triumph of franchise chains over mom-and-pop shops, of C-suite executives over entrepreneurs working in their basements. It will mean town centers filled with banks and 24-hour pharmacies rather than bookstores and nail salons and takeout counters. It will also mean fewer startups competing with incumbents. Ultimately, this means a less competitive American economy. New companies and small businesses drive job growth in the United States. In fact, they generate more productivity, more growth than bigger and established businesses do. The great small business die-off will fuel industry consolidation, which will both depress wages for workers and increase prices for consumers. More inequality, more sclerosis, and a smaller GDP. These are just some of the legacies of the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Duke?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems is that they work with the banks, the SBA, and you have to have a relationship with the bank. And there's a lot of people that don't deal with the banks in their businesses. They're cash only organizations, and also people of color have not had banks have not had very good relationships with people of color. Redlining is part of the history, and this is the same sort of thing that just emerges because there's very little oversight on this. So I thought that right when they structured it. I thought, oh, you have to do the banks and you have to have a relationship with the bank before you can even get your proposal in.
So if you don't have a relationship, you don't have an in.
Yep.
And let me tell you that the real estate market has quietly been moving very quickly. It is all shook up, as Elvis would say.
Huh.
Let me share with you from this Forbes article what is going on. Global property markets post-pandemic, how and where COVID-19 is creating opportunities. The global shutdown in response to the coronavirus pandemic is going to have some big effects on the real estate market worldwide. In fact, it already is. Have you been paying attention to how just recently gentrified cityscapes are being emptied out? Places like New York, where people don't have access to parks, to yards, to living independently of other people, living separated from other people. So there's like a whole space between the buildings.
Yeah.
Not to mention that you're not living in the same building with a whole bunch of other families is highly sought after during the pandemic. In fact, many people are leaving big city centers and heading for the countryside, heading for the vast, wide open spaces like right here in Minnesota and North Dakota. It's really incredible what is happening all throughout the globe as prices are, the global shutdown in response to the coronavirus pandemic is going to have big effects on this market. And what that means is that there's going to be people looking for survivalist opportunities. The survivalist market is going to see a big boom. What is that? What is a survivalist? Well, those peoples that, can live off the fat of the land.
Okay. Yeah.
The people that want to live off the grid, that want to, be out there on their own with nobody for miles and miles around them. Maybe not an island, but maybe someplace up in the mountains or out in the woods, far, far away from humankind. Those kinds of places are going to be highly sought after right now. Also, brand name markets are going to be recovering the quickest. Now, in terms of recovering markets, not the ones that are going to be the most sought after right away, but eventually the ones that are going to come back. The ones that are going to come back are the brand name markets. And the brand name markets are those places that follow that real estate rule of location, location, location.
Okay.
So a place like Paris, a place like London, a place like New York, despite the fact that right now people would love nothing better than to sell their property in New York and get the heck out, go to the suburbs, go somewhere far, far away from everywhere, those places have prime real estate that's very, very hard to get into and has been generationally. So those places will likely come back. Also, vacation rentals are going to collapse.
I suppose I hadn't thought about that.
All of the Airbnb market, all of those places that vacation, they were vacation homes or what are those called when you...
Timeshares.
Timeshares.
Oh, yeah.
It's all going down the toilet now.
Finally, you can get out of that timeshare you've always wanted to.
Well, let me just tell you that, at the top of the list of the markets that are going to be hardest hit is, guess what? Mexico.
Yeah.
Cancun, Playa del Carmen, where there's going to be zero traffic, and it's going to kill rental returns and lead to depreciation of value of up to 50%
Oh my God.
of the property values. Yeah. However, those well-established and relatively accessible markets will come back before farther flung, less developed locations like Akumal or Tulum. If you don't know, Tulum is like an island off of Cancun. But,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
high-density cities, likewise, will see a collapse in their rental markets like Mexico City. Think Rio de Janeiro. That's going to diminish. Crowds are going to not be at those places. Vacations, second home markets will rebound very slowly. Interest will pick up as air travel begins to return, but it's going to take 5 to 10 years for
Wow.
any meaningful recovery in some cases.
Jeez.
And that is without a second pandemic, a second wave, you know? On the other hand, as these markets will be hit the hardest, they're the places to shop for crisis level bargains.
Like,
If you're one of those people that wants to take advantage of a good crisis, here's your chance to shop. Don't buy for cash flow or appreciation alone, or maybe even at all. Next, livable low-density cities like the wide open spaces in North Dakota
yep.
will now enjoy new demand. The world's most livable cities will be modest populations, small populations, and those are the ones that you're going to see recover quickly. They will see a boom of people looking for options for reinventing their lives and starting all over again in locations that offer good and affordable quality of life with relatively safe distance from other people because of the new pandemic. People are going to be looking for places that they can enjoy growing, their businesses or their families and still be physically distanced and safe. So as everything is changing, businesses have to make the decisions about whether they reopen and whether they don't. And there's going to be some folks that are going to criticize businesses for reopening, criticize how businesses reopen, criticize whether or not they want to make you wear a mask or clean your hands or put hand sanitizer on or whatever. But that's the cost of doing business. And you have to understand as a customer, as a consumer, you're going onto private property. You're going into someone's business and you have to follow their rules. Okay? For starters. Second of all, if you're going to go into somebody's place of business, who's assuming the liability? They are. They have to assume the liability for a slip and fall, for a pothole in the parking lot. They have to assume liability for not clearing off the snow and ice off their sidewalk. They have to assume liability if you get COVID in their store. So you know what? Or if you give it to their employees. So you know what? If they ask you to wear the dang mask, put it on. If they put some hand sanitizer in your hands, wash your hands. For Pete's sake. I mean, if they're going to have to put their lives on the line to cut your hair, the least you can do is put on a stupid mask. It's not a big deal. And it makes me upset when I hear that there's people out there that are criticizing our local businesses that are struggling to make these tough decisions. Some of them are deciding not to reopen. Zambro's Variety here in Fargo has posted an open letter notifying everyone that as they see every day that people are opening their doors again because we can reopen in North Dakota, that everyone will reopen. But, Zambro says that they have people calling them to make sure that they're going to open. And then when they tell them that they're still closed, people are surprised and they've been questioning them. And they've even had individuals informing Zambros that remaining closed is poor business and that they won't survive if they don't open their doors soon. People are pressuring Zambros to put the people inside of their business that they have to assume liability for at risk. And the truth is, yes, every day that Zambros, as they put it, remains closed, the public is one more day. To the public, it's one more day they're not doing business in a way that's conducive to long-term sustainability. The freedom given each business to determine whether to remain closed or to reopen is an excruciatingly difficult place to be. However, when given an ultimatum between doing what's best for our business financially and what's best for our health and our community's health, we'll choose our community every time. So, folks, you have to understand that businesses in your community are making these tough decisions as well.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be trying to criticize them, to pressure them, or to give them a hard time for their troubles. We got to figure out a way how we fit in. How do we do our level best to make it easy for those businesses to provide us those services? In the Arizona Daily Star, they had an article about what the future of hotel
Yeah.
and
question.
lodging will be like. And I actually found an original CBS, I think, CNN, excuse me, a CNN article that has all of the information and links. And they have some pretty interesting graphics of what the future will look like. That first graphic that you showed of the hotels kind of shows you how instead of at your check-in having a group of people standing there where you walk up to different lines and crowd around the desk, and
It's like a parking lot attendant booth.
there's glass around it.
Yep.
So you can't just walk up there and talk directly to the person. There's not 50 people. There's not 10 people. There's not even 2 people. There's one person there, and they're wearing a mask.
It looks like a kiosk over here. to
There's
the
a
side.
kiosk, and there are indicators on the floor of where you are supposed to stand.
Yep.
And all throughout this article, it kind of gives you an idea of what the hotel industry is going to do in order to reopen, which is already planned, by the way. They are going to come back, and I'm sharing that Future Hotels link with you so you can take a look at it in more detail. They have all sorts of programs and policy regulations and rules that they are setting forth. The American Hotel Lodging Association put forth this whole guideline PDF. I'm going to share all of that so you can take a closer look at how they're really gearing up to do this work. And it's really involved. If you take a look at it, even in a cursory fashion, you'll see they have a whole section on an employee and guest health, how you're supposed to wash your hands and sanitize, employee and guest health concerns. What do you do when one of your employees shows symptoms of COVID, or one of the guests shows symptoms of COVID? And then if you scroll down there, you'll see that they're going to have signage. How do you notify the CDC when you have somebody that's COVID positive in your facility? They also have one for the employees' responsibilities, training for COVID preparedness, all of the general advice on, coughing into your elbow or and something else other than the air, not regularly disinfecting and not reusing any utensils that can be used by or contaminated by other folks, safe distancing, all the things you've heard, plus special training that they will have to learn and how they're going to be responsible when they're having interactions with guests, which will from now on be very limited, including their cleaning protocols for products and rooms, so that all communal spaces are spaced out to the CDC guidelines of 6 feet or more, how they're going to interact when they are bringing you, when they're recovering the room for you, or when they're opening the room to you. Everything from now on is going to involve keyless entry, digital keys sent to your phone that automatically open the door, food and beverages being deposited in some sort of box or vessel such that you never see the room service person and they never see you.
Yep.
It's going to be this like eerie experience where you're not going to go and check in and have people hand you towels and mints or anything like that. All of the concierge style things that you're used to, the valet parking and, the spa and all of, and the turn down and all of that stuff, forget about it. In the post-pandemic life, you will go to places like hotels, and the quality of your experience is going to depend on how little contact you have with their staff, what little contact you have with anyone, and how often they re-clean contact areas that are very used. In distancing, they're going to make sure that the front desk parking services, the pools, the beaches, the workout rooms, the meeting and convention spaces, everything needs to follow the safe distancing guidelines. That's going to really change the whole hotel industry, which is a lot about servicing people in an individual way. And how do you keep that aspect of it? Let me share with you what the Hilton is doing. The Hilton, of course, is going to, they're touting that they have this keyless entry. So they send it to your phone. You just show up, you'll walk right up to the room, and boom, you're in. That's the way of the future. And of course, they have protocols for the Hilton, which include the sanitary seal. So when you go in, it's like you're going to be breaking a seal. You know how they used to put a little piece of paper over your toilet so you knew that they had just been cleaned? Now it'll be for the whole room.
Wow.
It's going to have a seal on it, and you're going to know just who cleaned your room. There's going to be 10 high-touch deep cleaning areas. They're going to get rid of a lot of the things that you're used to seeing in your rooms. The little papers that tell you what channels and the menus and the stationery. Forget about all of that. Pens. There ain't going to be anything in your room.
Yeah.
There's going to be no contact check-ins, disinfectant wipes, cleaning procedures. They're going to focus on cleaning the fitness center and not having a lot of people in there. They're also going to have innovation in cleaning technologies, and they're looking into new ways of cleaning the hotels that includes electrostatic sprayers, which use an electrostatically charged disinfecting mist and an ultraviolet light to sanitize surfaces and objects. Are you ready for the future, folks? And here's the thing that scares me the most, because all of this, believe it or not, is going to amount to cheaper stays for the public.
Really?
If and when we all get ready to go back on the road again, there's going to be masks and gloves and all of that, hand sanitizer, disinfectant, social distancing, and overall, your room rate will absolutely be cheaper than it was. And guess what? The big question remains, how do you enforce all of this? Because the guest screening is a question. It is, up till now, from everything I've looked at, a suggestion.
I see.
So they're going to be temperature screening guests and employees, of course. The employees really don't have a choice. Maybe they're going to be testing them. What if they implement testing at the hotels where you can get a quick test?
Yep.
You have maybe for some of these fancier hotels like the Venetian in Vegas,
yes.
they'll have, the Venetian is touting that they're going to have thermal scanners that are going to be discreet and non-invasive, which means you probably won't know you're being scanned. You're not going to know. That's the only way they're going to get away with scanning people, because just like there's folks out there that are not going to allow you to put a mask on them and they're going to demand services, there's going to be people out there that are not going to let you take their temperature. And you know why some of these folks aren't going to let you take their temperature or put a mask on them? Because they know they're COVID positive and they feel they have a constitutional right to go out and shop, to go out and and spend their money in a hotel, and to go and infect other people if necessary. And if you're one of those weak-bodied people with underlying conditions, or you're an elderly person, then it's on you. It's your responsibility to make sure that you keep yourself safe. Never mind that you or your elderly spouse have to eventually leave home, even if you are quarantined most of the time, to get some groceries or to get some fresh air. There's going to be people in this country that are not going to comply. They're not going to comply. Mm-hmm. And one of the folks that we have highlighted a lot in our coverage throughout the years has been the tailor-made barber studio and our good friends Brendan LaFrance. Brendan and his fellow barbers in the area have started to go back to work, especially here in Minnesota, North Dakota. And what they're finding, I saw Brandon post a video recently talking to folks about their new requirements for masks in his shop. And he said that he's had some customers that came in and they scoffed. They were a little annoyed. They were asked to wear a mask. And this is for the protection of the barber and it's for the protection of the other people. Yep. And you can't just have people wearing masks. They have to be worn properly. Mm-hmm. You can't just wear it over your mouth and keep your nose uncovered. Mm-hmm. So I feel for these gentlemen and ladies going out there back to work and still having to deal with folks, customers who refuse to understand the danger they're putting themselves in and just, help them out and do what they need. They're doing that for the other customers that want it and for the safety and the health of the community. In this video I'm about to share with you from TaylorMade Barber, he is talking to other barbers about how the industry has to change. And I wanted to share it with you because they've done so much to set the standard for how they make themselves good stewards of the industry and pioneers of how you work in a post-pandemic era so that people feel 100% safe and secure to come to your business. And my man, Brendan LaFrance, is doing it right. In fact, you cannot contact him directly and stop at the shop and set up an appointment. If you want to book your trim with TaylorMade Barber Studio, you have to go to www.tailormadebookings. That's TailorMaid bookings.com in order to even get an appointment. And here in this video, he's going to show you all the other modifications he has made in his facility, setting the standard for other people so that you can all come and get your hair done.
Yeah, we really do appreciate him. He actually did underwriting with our station at KPPPLP 88.1, which you're listening to right now. So he's been a supporter of our station, and we need to support him too.
That's right. Take a look at all of the modifications he has made and the recommendations that he is making, not just for barbers to stay clean and on the cutting edge of post-pandemic life for barbers, but also what customers can look out for in their next barber experience.
What's going on, my barbers? I got a message. This is going out to all my barber friends. I got barber friends on here from here all the way across the other side of the world. New Zealand, England, everywhere. But I know that we are suffering right now as an industry. I know a lot of people are hurting financially. And it's getting frustrating for a lot of people. I'm lucky enough to be in a state where I'm back in the shop. But I know for a lot of people out there, a lot of people are saying, like, we went to school for 1,200 hours. We went to school for 1,500 hours to learn about infection control. And individually, that's awesome individually, But as an industry, I can say we suck at that. We're not good at infection control. We're not good at sanitation, disinfection. Unfortunately, as an industry, I'm saying, not anybody in particular. If we were good at this stuff, little things like ringworm wouldn't be an issue in our industry, but it happens. I hope everybody, this is a time for a change in professionalism. And where we got to step it up as an industry, and we got to keep to these sanitary practices in order to be taken seriously and be considered an essential business. And if you see a barber not spraying his clippers, if you see a barber not changing razor blades in between clients, not washing hands, call them out. Nobody wants to tell nobody, and that's one thing that up our industry too. I'll flip y'all around real quick. I'm back up in the shop, but I'll show y'all. We got some stuff going on. So I'm hanging out in the waiting area, but I got the waiting area tied off. I got all my clients waiting out. They wait outside before they come in. I got a little thing right there so you don't have to open the door with your hand. My wife's calling, sorry, babe. I got a sign here asking to wash your hands. Got our blue tape where you can stand, 6 feet social distancing. We got our plexiglass dividers just so you can have that division. Of course, you got Cool Care, Barbicide in there. We got wipes. We got a bunch of hand sanitizer, face masks, gloves, Barbicide spray, all kind of stuff. We got our proof hand sanitizer. Hey, baby. So I just wanted to say, as an industry, we got to do better. And honestly, I'm guilty of not doing 100% when it comes to sanitary practice right now myself. Right now, though, we're in a pandemic. And whether, nah, she's cool. We're in a pandemic, and, whether y'all believe it's an actual health epidemic, it is a social epidemic. So we got to have that social responsibility of doing what we got to do for our clients. So with that, I'm out. I got another client coming here real soon. So, all right, y'all have a good day. And, don't take this as offensive to my barbers. Don't take this any kind of way. But, we got to step up. We got to do better. All right, guys, y'all have a good one. Hopefully y'all can get cutting real soon. Hey, thank you, Charles. We'll see you real soon, man. Peace.
They're playing Live and Let Die there in the background.
I just wanted to share. I wanted to share some of the comments from people talking about their local businesses. And Sherry comments that vet clinics, groomers are needed, but she's not sure about when they're going to be opening up. And Colleen says the veterinarians are opening up in her area, but you have to wait in the parking lot, kind of like this barber shop.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy Fettig mentions that she has a friend in Alaska who had to isolate in a hotel for 2 weeks. The staff had him bag up his sheets and towels when he needed fresh ones. I imagine it was done to reduce the risk for employees and their guests. Yes, folks need to start to change the way that they do things. And for the foreseeable future, we may have to change how we do business in the post-pandemic life. And to that end, here at 88.1 FM, KPPPLP, our technical assistant and moderator, Nemo, has created an open broadcasting software tutorial for all of the people out there. If you're an entertainer, if you're a comedian, if you're a broadcaster, if you do podcasts, if you do any kind of web-based or news-based shows, you see how these late-night shows are doing everything from home. You see how there's a lot of different newscasters out there doing their shows from home. And when the production team isn't there, everything kind of goes to heck.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to. You can still produce high quality broadcasts like we're doing here at our home studio at KPPPLP and have a good quality product that you can share over the internet. And right now, it is available for you to purchase. This is one of several installments, not too many more. I think there's going to be one more and maybe some follow-up for technical support by Nemo. But this one is your opener, and it gives you everything that you need to get your broadcast on. It is quick, simple, easy to understand. Check out Nemo's open broadcast software. You can purchase it at the link that we are going to be sharing with you at https://gum.co/TXGD. We'll share that. You can find that on our comments of our show, and we'll put a announcement on 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead Facebook page so that you can go and download that for your future broadcasts. Now, I want to leave you with a funny little clip of what the future for a barista at the Luna Bar, at the Luna restaurant and bar, and how they're thinking about serving their guest drinks. I don't know if this is going to work, but take a look for yourselves.
It's in Fargo, right?
Yeah, it's not fully rewound.
This ain't gonna work. Here you go, sir.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Is that like a grabber or something?
Yeah, it was.
It's kind of funny. I had a little grabber on there, and she's like, I don't know if this is going to work. I think that you might end up spilling more than you serve if you use that method.
Yep.
But hey, I love to see the innovation. It's always good to see folks trying new ways of keeping their businesses running and keeping their customers and employees safe. So good on you, Luna. Thanks to all of the different businesses that are participating in reopening and having the conversations around reopening, not just here in the Fargo-Moorhead region, but all around our great country. And thanks to all of you for spending time with us here on A Mexican Crossing Lines with your guests, Cindy, hosts. What am I doing?
And your host, Duke Gomez.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo-Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Have a great night, and God bless.